Hi, this is Ren.
This is Casey.
And this is All Walks of Film. So 2017 was an amazing year in film. And yes, we did our worst list, but we have an even longer list for our best list because this was such a good year. And there were so many films in 2017 that didn't even make the list.
I did a bottom 10, which is actually pretty bad for me. I usually only have like a bottom 5, like worst films of the year. But this year I could easily have a top 25.
Yeah, I had to choose the films that resonated with me the most in order to separate, and actually make our list different.
Yeah, and for me, my numbers 2 through 10, it's essentially a 9-way tie. They're not actually really ranked in any particular way because I think they're all equal caliber quality films, but also are all movies that are a piece of me now. They all have the emotional resonance and the technical ability. That's mind blown, melting out of my ears. Heavy metal kind of feeling towards movies this year.
Yeah, and we're not sponsored by them, but I do have to give a shout out to Moviepass for this because, without Moviepass, we wouldn't have been able to afford to go to this many movies this year.
Yeah, it never would have happened. We probably saved $500 in movie tickets this year.
Yeah, it's pretty insane.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Netflix has been great because there were several Netflix originals that
you could enjoy at home for the same cost, yeah.
Yeah, and 2 of the films that I nominated were Netflix originals.
Okay.
All right, so this is our top 15 best movies of 2017. All right, so my number 15 is I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore. This is directed by Macon Blair, and it stars the woman, I forget what her name is. She originally was in Heavenly Creatures. Melanie Linsky, she's an actress that's kind of been present a lot, but she's never been big. And I think she has a real presence, and I like the fact that she actually looks like a normal person. That was one of the things that really drew me to the film, the fact that she looked like a normal person. But also, this is just such a quirky and fun movie, and really resonates with kind of the fears that a lot of people face today, especially the idea of, having your own personal space being invaded.
Mm-hmm.
The one major breakout role in this movie was Jane Levy. I thought she was really amazing as one of the robbers. I really would like to see her in more work. And, she has a presence that I don't think has even been fully reached yet. I think she is going to be an A-list name in the future. Mm-hmm. She has such a presence, and I enjoyed her performance in Don't Breathe, even though that movie didn't resonate with me as much as it did with other people. I think her performance in this was absolutely amazing. It's just an interesting movie that kind of feels like a Coen Brothers movie to a certain extent, mixing comedy with horrific acts and stuff like that. Yeah, so that is my number 15. My number 14 is Downsizing.
Okay, and that's one of my honorable mentions.
So I was not expecting to like Downsizing as much as I did, because the trailers did not look like something that I would really be into, and it was one of those funny things where it's like once I watched the movie, it was like, oh, they made these trailers for a specific subset of white people to go into, oh, it's just a movie about bougie white people, like, hanging out and getting small and living large, and it's totally not that.
Yeah, because the movie is actually more about classist issues, and especially how racism plays into that, but also sort of the way that America works with the rest of the world, or as more importantly, the way that it doesn't work with the rest of the world, but also how America is very content to turn a blind eye against people who are in poverty in our own country. And I do think that it was really interesting that they were trying to appeal specifically to people who did not want to see that movie. They weren't trying to appeal to, liberals who already are like, well, I want immigrants to feel welcome and to have rights, and we need to help poor people. And, they weren't trying to convince people who already have the same set of values that they have. They were trying to convince people who don't believe in any of those things to go see this movie. And I really like that, but it did hurt them in the box office really bad, which is really sad.
People saw that and they were like, well, this isn't the movie I signed up for.
Well, more importantly, liberals were like, oh, well, I don't want to watch that. That looks stupid. Also, I think that even though it's a good song, I actually think Same As It Ever was a bad pick because a lot of people are sick of seeing that in advertisements.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of people say that that's why they didn't watch the movie was because of that song. It's like, dude, really? That's stupid. But also, shout out to Hong Chow because she was freaking awesome yet again, in this movie.
Yeah, Hong Chow was pretty amazing in this movie. And that was one of the most amazing things about the movie because I didn't really know anything about her character going in.
Mm-hmm. And she was kind of the center of the film, which was really cool. But also, most of the reason why I saw Downsizing was because I was watching the trailer and I saw that she was getting top billing over big name Hollywood stars. And that blew my mind. And I was like, okay, what is this movie that they're actually trying to highlight her as higher than Kristen Wiig? What? Really?
Well, yeah, and, also special shout out to the production design, because
it was seriously some of the best production design this year. And really, this was a huge Oscar snub was not getting VFX, because surprisingly, almost nothing that was in the film was practical.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a shame. I would take Kong Skull Island out and put this movie in.
Yeah, but the PD was really great, because even when you're in scenes where everybody's small, and it would be super easy to just be like, okay, well, we just have a normal set with normal people. That's fine. No, even on, the 2 scale sets, they still tried to make everything look kind of dollhousey and kind of phony miniature, like that really cute dollhouse aesthetic, when everybody is the same size and you don't have that sense of scale. They still try to do, minor touches to make you feel like it's smaller than it really is.
One thing that I was really amazed by was the roses in the movie, because I was like, how did they do this?
They had a stand-in prop that apparently was really good, but wasn't reacting well to the lighting. So even those, life-size flowers were all VFX done in post.
I mean, it's amazing because, the roses themselves had the texture of real roses, and, watching them, hold it and everything like that, it's really impressive.
It's really realistic.
And it's really subtle, so a lot of people don't, catch on to it, but there's a lot of work being done, and it is a shame, absolutely a shame, that it wasn't nominated.
Absolutely. Even a lot of the stuff where you're compositing small people into big environments, it looks so real. It looks really, really effective. And I do want to say, this movie has much more convincing CGI effects than the big franchise movies this year. More so than the VFX in Star Wars, and definitely a lot more than the VFX in the DCEU films. And probably even more realistic than any given Marvel film that came out this year. And they're working on a minute budget.
Yeah, I do want to say that Logan had a lot of impressive VFX.
That's why I said most MCU. Right. Not Logan, but Logan also is an MCU. So
I guess technically now it is. I'm not sure.
Technically now it is, but, well, no. If there's another X-Men movie, it will be MCU, but Logan will never be MCU.
So yeah, that's my number 14. My number 13 is essentially a modern remake of The King of Comedy. It's Ingrid Goes West.
Oh, that's another one of my honorable mentions.
So I really enjoyed this film, and going into it, I knew nothing about this movie.
Except for Aubrey Plaza, so yes.
Yeah, Aubrey Plaza has been a presence that I have really enjoyed lately. I really liked her even though the show kind of disappointed me in the long run, I thought she did a really amazing performance in Legion.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't see the Nunsploitation movie that she did last year, but I kind of want to see it. But Ingrid Goes West is just such a modern dark comedy. And, you know, I really feel that this is probably one of the most underrated movies of the year just because of what it speaks to, you know, specific trends going on in our society now. And I think that it touches on the alienation of social media. Even though, like, social media is supposed to bring us together, you know, it oftentimes divides us. And I love the fact that this movie is centered around a creepy stalker. But since she's a pretty woman, the movie plays with you about that.
They do still make her really creepy.
Yes.
That opening scene was so funny and so horrifying at the same time.
It really reminded me of the episode of Black Mirror.
Nosedive?
Yeah, it really reminded me of that nosedive sequence of, you know, going into the wedding. And,
yeah.
Yeah. But the fact that she, like, actually pulled out mace and just sprayed her and the husband.
And then tries to, like, get her back after the fact and still be friends with her throughout the movie. It's so creepy.
And the truth of the matter is we all know somebody like that. We all, not to that extent, but we all know somebody who does, like, horrible things and then's like, can we still be friends?
Mm-hmm. It's also, I think, the first movie I've seen that really understands social media.
Mm-hmm.
We've been working slowly to try to incorporate computers and phones and social media into movies because they are such a part of our lives. And it always feels very stilted and weird. I mean, we've been getting better about it, but mostly in the sending and receiving of texts. Anything having to do with computers is really difficult for movies to get a hold of. But the movie really has an understanding of not only how social media works and how to relay it in film, but also how we relate to social media in a way that feels very genuine and not gimmicky, like, let's make a Instagram movie.
Yeah. And see, I don't really use Instagram, so I wasn't entirely familiar with that platform, but, like, you know, there's Twitter and all this other stuff that's being used in the movie, and it manages to incorporate that, but also, like, online culture in a way that, like, not even Black Mirror has tackled as accurately.
Well, one of the other things I liked in it that was really interesting is this is essentially Gangnam Style, the movie, where it's about these, you know, affluent, wealthy people who have these great lives where they essentially do nothing, but they live in great houses and go to these awesome events and read Joan Didion, and, you know, they're all enlightened and cultured. But the reality is that it's all a facade because you can't actually sustain yourself that way. Everyone is actually really broke. Like, the movie does explain how Ingrid has enough money to do it, but it also shows how she had so much money and burned through all of it in almost no time.
Yeah, and that's also a big problem of lower income people when they are presented with a lot of money is they usually tend to burn it instead of gradually...
Well, usually not in this kind of a situation.
Well,
usually
yeah.
The reason why that happens is because poor people do without so much in their lives that when they have a bit of money, they're like, well, I need to get this now before my money's gone.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting to see a movie, especially a comedy, actually tackle these issues with a lot of insight and understanding. And also, I have to give a shout out to O'Shea Jackson Jr., who was just a delight in this movie. He was so wonderful. Not because he was a Batman fan, because Batman Forever, are you kidding me? But just as an actor, he just lit up the movie. He was so wonderful.
And for those of you not familiar with him, he's Ice Cube's son, and he looks a lot like his father.
Yeah, if you're a little confused. He actually did play Ice Cube.
In Straight Outta Compton, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, wait, what? That's Ice Cube, but young. Yeah, because it's his kid. But he was really, really awesome in this movie. And also, shout out to Neon. They've only been a distributor for a year, and all the movies I've seen of theirs have been top caliber movies. And another one is on my top list.
Another one is on my top list as well. My number 12 is Get Out.
That's my number 11.
I really enjoy it. You want to talk about it now? Or?
Yeah,
Okay,
let's talk about it.
All right. So, Get Out is a modern retelling of the Stepford Wives. It's dealing with a very specific type of racism that we normally don't see. We normally see the down south, get out of our neighborhood kind of thing. And that's kind of like what I thought the movie was going to be.
in the movie.
Right. But that's kind of like what I thought the movie was going to be. I thought it was going to be like, oh, well, here are these like super racist people that are like, get out of our neighborhood. But instead, no, it's about like cultural appropriation. People like, I want to put my brain into your body.
It's also talking a lot about liberal racism, which I really, really appreciate, especially in our Hillary Clinton is an awesome candidate for people of color era.
Yeah, and I thought the movie was going to be about conservative racism.
No, it's about liberal racism, which is far more interesting and needs to be discussed a lot more because we do tend to give liberals a free pass for being ridiculously racist.
Yeah.
Well, you're well-intentioned, you're liberal. We know you don't mean bad things when you specifically don't support Black Lives Matter and you throw people who are asking you, why did you say that black people need to heal? You're throwing them out of your events. What? Oh, black men in hoodies are scary. You said that in 2017. No. The fact that you're a liberal does not excuse that. That's not really what the movie's about, but I just kept thinking about this movie as 2017 kept unfolding.
Yeah, as somebody who grew up near a suburb, I lived in Indianapolis. I was near Fishers and Noblesville and Carmel. I mean, they were all like white suburbs, and you didn't see a lot of black people there. And like anytime, you went with like your black friends or something like that, there was always like this polite awkwardness. And that's kind of like what this movie addresses. It's like, oh, I'm not racist. I would have voted for Obama for a third term and stuff like that.
Because that's the be-all, end-all of black achievement.
Well, yeah. I literally heard people make the argument back in like 2011 that I'm not racist. We have a black president. You can still be racist. That, did you vote for...
Even if you voted for him, you can still be racist. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very well done thriller. It's Jordan Peele's first feature. I mean, he's been doing shorts for...
He's been a part of the industry for at least the last 5 years. I think a lot longer, actually, but... Yeah,
so the notion of him being like a breakout star is a little bit...
I feel like that's a little disingenuous to say.
Yeah, because, Key and Peele was on for a good period of time.
But he's also done a lot of other work.
Yeah.
He's unfamiliar with the Hollywood industry, which I'm kind of glad he waited to do a feature film until he was really comfortable in the industry, because once Get Out became a huge thing, everyone wanted a piece of Jordan Peele, and he really comes across to me as somebody who's not going to let the system walk all over him just because he's a relative newcomer. I think he's going to hold his ground and do what he wants to do.
Yeah, and I'm really interested in his future film with Spike Lee, Black Klansman.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what his role is going to be. I don't know if it's going to be a co-directed piece or something like that, but the title itself sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
It might just be an extension of that Dave Chappelle sketch, but I don't know.
We'll see. The reason why I had to put Get Out on my list is because I have to shout out to any movie that really teaches me something I didn't know about. And with Get Out, for me personally, it was, it brought to my attention a lot of issues that African American athletes have, specifically, because I don't pay attention to sports balls. So that kind of thing was really over my head. I just don't pay attention to it. But when I saw Get Out and I saw the sort of like modern, slave auction that was happening, I was like, okay, he's putting that in the movie for a very specific reason. He's trying to say that this relates to something modern. What is it? And I talked to a few people about it and I tried to do some research, and eventually I was like, oh, he's talking about athletes who are being sort of bought and sold by wealthy people who aren't putting their own bodies on the line, that's really messed up. That's not something I ever would have spent more than a minute thinking about if I hadn't seen Get Out. And I think what people take away and learn from the movie will be different for everybody. But anything that's actively trying to get people to think about their society in like really interesting ways that are entertaining but also actually educational, that is such a ridiculously hard line to walk.
Yeah, and also, I gotta say that I really appreciated the fact that it kind of tackled the white girls dating black guys
to be cool
issue. Yeah, because I grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood, and there are some people that, it's completely genuine, and other people that it feels like they're dating a black person as a prop. Like, it doesn't feel that they care about who they're actually dating.
They just want to be good with.
Yeah, it's like, who do they look good with? Or like in some cases, it's like, well, my parents are racist, so I'm going to, date this black guy to challenge them. Or, I wonder what it would be like to date a black guy. Like, and not even like really think about, this is a person too.
Mm-hmm. And Key and Peele has actually tackled that a couple of times on their show in really interesting ways, but it was cool to see like an entire movie centered around something that the main character thinks is genuine.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people got offended when it was nominated in the comedy category for the Golden Globes, and like, quite frankly, I personally think that it is a very staunch satire. Yeah. And there are comedic elements to that, and I do think it actually qualifies as a black comedy. Although other people will be like, oh, no, it's horrific. It's like, well, I grew up kind of in the community that this movie is made for. And not to say that I can speak for those people, but I can say that, at least for me, there were a lot of comedic elements to take out of this movie.
It was really interesting to me watching this movie because I saw it twice in public settings. And the first time I saw it, it was sort of this uproarious, like, fuck yeah, down with, the white institutions. Okay. But it was really funny because the second time I saw it, everyone in the theater liked it. And they were talking very well about it after the fact, but they were too scared to laugh at any of the jokes. Like, they were way too nervous to actually enjoy the movie, which is very much the awkward white thing that the movie is specifically trying to address. Yeah. It was really funny to me that I was just like, dude, seriously? Like, even jokes that have nothing to do with race, they were just too scared to laugh at anything funny. And I was like, you're not a shitty person for laughing at a comedy that's trying to talk about racism. You're not racist if you laugh at a movie about racism.
All right, so my number 11 is a documentary. My only documentary on this list, and that is One of Us. Mm-hmm. One of Us is a really compelling documentary about Hasidic Jewish people who leave their community and the struggles that they have to face doing that, and also the struggle that they faced in the Jewish community that caused them to leave. I feel that the only reason why this movie wasn't nominated for Best Documentary is I think that some people could watch this movie and reaffirm their anti-Semitism. That is the only reason. And let's face it, Hollywood has a predominant Jewish presence. This movie is not trying to speak illy of Judaism. It is trying to speak illy of isolated communities. And so often there are circumstances where if people isolate themselves from society, a lot of stuff can fester. Also it allows certain horrific crimes to happen without any sort of repercussions because they're trying to save face. This movie was powerful. It challenged me on my own personal spiritual beliefs. It challenged me because I grew up in a Christian household. I'm not an atheist, but I am agnostic. I'm interested in exploring elements of the faith. And this movie challenged me in a way that I haven't been challenged before. It's on Netflix right now. Watch this movie.
So for my number 15, most of my honorable mentions were kind of movies that I wanted to bring attention to because I think they deserve a lot more talk than they're getting. and a lot more attention than they're getting. But my number 15 is also kind of like that. It's a smaller release this year called Lady Macbeth. And I was just immediately on board. I was like, I'm going to see this movie. Doesn't matter. I'm going to see this. And I finally caught it when it was on DVD. And to me, this was the movie that everyone said The Beguiled was. But genuinely, this is a good movie. It's a really great period piece. It's a very interesting look at sort of why bitches be crazy, in a sense. Because it's a super interesting take on this woman who, because of her social stature and because of her gender, she's just a prop in somebody else's life, and it causes her to do all these unspeakable things because she literally has nothing else to do with her life. She can't go outside, she doesn't have a baby, and she doesn't want one. Her husband's gone all the time, and she doesn't like her husband anyway. She doesn't have anywhere she can go, she doesn't have a purpose in her life. A lot of scenes in the movie, not in a boring way, surprisingly, but a lot of scenes in the movie sort of come back to her sitting on a couch for hours because she has nothing to do. And now, to be fair, Lady Macbeth is a genuinely shitty person, which is a lot of what makes the movie really work and be really enjoyable. She's not some martyr. She's not some, like, perfect, oh, this poor woman, she's so suffering in life. No. She's a really shitty person who doesn't care about anybody, doesn't care about their lives, will do horrific things, and is also kind of racist. You're not really supposed to feel sympathy for her, but maybe if she was given something more constructive to do, things wouldn't have ended up as tragically as they did. It's a really, really interesting period piece. It is a UK film, which is why it didn't do very well here, because it was being brought over. And it is a period piece. And the costuming and the sets are really, really good, but really subdued. It's not like a Downton Abbey look at the glitz and glamour kind of a thing. But I was just so entertained and invested in all of these terrible people and why they're doing all these terrible things. It was so interesting and compelling. And this is a movie that easily could have been very dull. A movie about boredom is almost always boring. Like a movie about boredom or listlessness, very, very rarely do those movies actually succeed in being entertaining, but also actually having something worth saying besides just, oh, doesn't it suck to be bored?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why Call Me By Your Name got on my worst list, was because of that very reason.
No one's bored in that movie. That movie's just boring.
Okay.
To me, personally, that's how I see it.
Right. I think the best example of showing boredom in a movie is The Graduate.
See, that's a very successful one.
Right.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I totally agree with you. Also, this is our first film that we've mentioned that uses poisonous mushrooms as a plot device.
It's a period film with a woman using poisonous mushrooms to poison a man. It's the second time we've mentioned a movie like that. Yeah, and there will be another one.
Yeah.
So, Lady Macbeth, absolutely adored that movie from beginning to end. I love it. That needs a lot more attention.
Yeah, I really think it does. And, a special shout out to Florence Pugh.
Oh, she was just a vision in this movie. I mean, yeah, she's pretty to look at. They do a lot to downplay her, actually, her looks. Mm-hmm. But she was just a powerhouse of a performer. To be, like, really charismatic and really unlikable at the same time is very, very hard to do with people who don't have a personality outside of their films, like a celebrity of some kind, where you kind of already know who they are.
And I'm really excited.
I want to see her in everything.
Well, she's going to be starring in the Amazon original Chenwick Park piece. So that'll be really exciting. And, we did actually watch the film that she first made her debut in, which was The Falling.
Oh, yeah, and she was really good in that, too. The Falling has its ups and downs, I think. Lady Macbeth, I just think, is amazing.
Yeah, it's a really good film. Didn't make my list, but, deserves a mention. This speaks to this year.
Yeah.
There's so many films. I didn't even include Split, and I really like Split.
Mm-hmm. My number 14 is Kimi no Namae wa, or as it's known in the US, Your Name. That movie kind of had an uphill battle for me. Not because it didn't look good, like, the animation quality is, unquestionably awe-inspiring. But I'm not a slice of life person in any culture, but, like, especially in Japanese media, like, I kind of like School Rumble okay. I really love Yotsubato. That's about it. I'm not a slice of life person, and this seemed like a very, these two people, they switch bodies, and they're different genders, so hijinks ensue, and I was just kind of like, okay. I'm gonna walk out of it, and it's gonna be cute. Very cute. But for the first half of the movie, I was really sold on these characters in this situation more than I usually would be. They really did develop both of them very well, and even though they did have some humor around, like, the gender swapping, which is fine, you need to address it, that wasn't the crux of it. A lot of it was they sort of figured out what was going on and sort of settled into this routine pretty naturally, and then just sort of developed this sort of pen pal kind of a friendship. It was very genuine and very emotionally engaging, and I did buy into it 100%. And I was already there by the time the twist happened, which I won't say because it's just like, I didn't know there was going to be a twist, and it shook the foundations of the movie, which is really rare. It is sort of a bigger than life kind of a premise, but it does everything to earn it on a story level, but also on like an emotional, character-driven level. Obviously, the animation is incredible. The fact that this wasn't nominated for Best Animated Feature when we had the Boss Baby and Ferdinand is literally a shame.
And I don't know if it was because, like, technically it should have been nominated last year because, you know, Japanese distribution and all that
because
kind of stuff, but
it had a huge American release this year.
I don't know if it was huge, but
for an animated film, I mean, it wasn't Studio Ghibli huge, but other than a Studio Ghibli film, this is one of the biggest anime releases for non-franchise anime.
And also, I have to say, if your only exposure to anime is Studio Ghibli, change that. There are so many anime films that I think are significantly better than Studio Ghibli films, and that's not a slight on Studio Ghibli films. It's just
they're even better.
Yeah, I mean, special shout out to Satoshi Kon and all of his work.
Everything he ever touched, plus Mamoru Oshii,
specifically Paprika, just because of, like, if you like Inception, watch Paprika. All the complaints you had about Inception are not in that movie.
Well, also Tokyo Godfather is very Japanese, but I also think that is an incredibly universal film.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the great things about Your Name, too. It's a very Japanese film, but they're also...
It is very universal. No, the J.J. Abrams American live-action film is not going to be functional.
And it has
literally cannot function.
And it has Eric Hessier, I don't know how to pronounce his name, the guy who wrote Arrival is doing the screenplay.
Oh, dear God. Go drunk your home. That movie was, again, just 100%. My number 13 was Logan. Again, an uphill battle for me. I was just like, nope. For good reason. I've been super pissy about the fact that all the X-Men movies are Wolverine movies. It's called the X-Men. You have a huge ensemble to pick from. Not every movie needs to be about freaking Wolverine. Give someone else a turn. There are a lot of interesting characters we could focus on. But also, we had 2 other Wolverine movies that both blew chunks. So the fact that they made one that was so bad, they made one Wolverine Origins movie that was so bad that they had to immediately turn around and make another one that was also pretty bad. I was just like, dude, you're doing it again? Why? Stop it. So I had essentially no hope for Logan. I was not really interested. I didn't know a lot about it either.
Well, yeah, and then I was like...
I didn't see any of the trailers. I didn't really know what it was about. I didn't really get that it was an Old Man Logan movie.
Yeah, and then I went to the theater and saw it, and I was like, dude, you have to see this movie.
Which is the only reason why I saw it. But obviously, it made my top 15 for a good reason. It's incredible. It actually does the Wolverine character justice. Finally, after 13 movies, we finally have a good Wolverine movie that does his character a lot of justice. It actually goes through his pain, physical and internal. It's not just, he was made in a lab. We've seen that a million times. Move on. They moved on. Good. Professor X was heartbreaking in this movie and hysterical. Patrick Stewart was just wonderful. His character was so well written. And X-23 was such a great breakout character and such a breath of fresh air. She's so much better than 11. And she, in Stranger Things, she's everything I wish that 11 was. And she is kind of this very, tropey, oh, she's a girl who was put in a program and she's a human weapon. Okay, so she's cute, but she's dangerous. We've seen this a million times. And actually, 2 of those movies were some of the best movies I saw this year. But X-23 was such an interesting take on it because she was a really interesting personality and not this boring blank slate of a personality. And the fact that she was very unapologetically Hispanic was really nice to see in a movie. She's bilingual in the movie and they don't subtitle it for shit. Awesome. I dig that. You don't need subtitles to get what's going on. If you do know Spanish, the movie will reward you a little bit for not being an ignorant prick. But everything about Daphne Keene's performance was just amazing. She's a big part of the reason why I hate Wonder Model. Because Gal Gadot, as an adult, was outdone by this little girl in her debut role in every element. In the emotional element, in the physicality element, in the character development. All of it. X-23 was... She should be the face of, female heroes of 2017. I mean, to be fair, we had a lot of good ones. The Valkyrie in Thor Ragnarok is another really, really good one. There are actually a lot of really good ones this year, but if we have to crown one of them, I'd say X-23 in a heartbeat. The story is so sad, and it earns everything it sets out to do. It's really sad. It kind of shits on comics in a way that I think is deserved and needs to be said every once in a while, but not in a way that doesn't come from a place of love for comics. I loved everything with the production design, the special effects, the makeup. Why wasn't this nominated for Best Hair and Makeup? Why?
Yeah,
Kick out Victoria and Abdul, put this movie, because it was brutal to look at. It was so good.
If you're going to nominate films like The Revenant, this deserves a nomination because, especially the pus that was coming out of his knuckles.
And that was really subtle. There wasn't a lot in the camera work or in the editing that was trying to draw attention to it, but a lot of care was done with makeup, so you do actually see it, and you feel like a visceral reaction to his pain.
Yeah, also, I have to give a shout out to the compositing on Hugh Jackman's face, because there were a lot of scenes like the car chase scenes and some of the action scenes where Hugh Jackman wasn't actually doing the physical performance. He was just doing the facial performance, which that is wonderful. But the fact that it was so seamless, that deserves a special effects nomination. Also, there was something very specific about Donald. I think that's what his name is. The villain in the movie. There was something.
Oh, his robot hand.
His robot hand with the worn rubber fingers. It's such a small attention to detail that I have to get a shout out for. It
sells the effect, though, that everything isn't just bright and shiny, just taken off the shelf iPod sleek kind of a thing. There's also a lot about the movement that feels very worn out. It doesn't move seamlessly. It actually has a lot of problems, and you have to spend a lot more time to make something good look like it's broken.
Yeah, and I had a complaint for the longest time that, let's face it, Wolverine is a character with knives attached to his hands, and he has never been able to, really show that in the PG-13 movies because you can't. But I also made the complaint that, it never looked like he was in pain when the blades came out, and this movie changed that.
And he's talked about how it's painful for him, but they've never shown it.
Right.
And that's a big problem. This movie does both really well.
And the amount... I also think Hugh Jackman's performance in this movie... he's been playing this character for almost 20 years, and he freaking delivered with this role. I mean... He actually passed out screaming in one of his... He's
always been willing to do things like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's made himself completely ripped, for all these movies. You know, so much so that his nickname is Huge Jacked Man. But you know, I really appreciate the fact
was worn down in this movie.
Yeah, and
a lot of that was in his physicality.
Yeah, and Greatest Showman be damned. This is the movie that he should have elevated himself forward for, you know, because this deserved a nomination.
Absolutely.
You know, as far as acting goes, like, this is among the best acting that I've seen in 2017.
Well, honestly, I feel like this has been a really weak year for male actors. So maybe it's just because he doesn't have a lot of competition this year.
Well, and it could have also been an accumulative thing, because he's been playing this character for 20 years. Why not, like, nominate him?
I agree.
I guess so that Gary Oldman absolutely can win.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, also the recency effect. That came out in May. Nobody cares.
Everyone forgot about it. Came out in February.
Yeah, but that was a slow burn over the course of the year of it growing and growing and growing.
Yeah.
Which is a little different. So my number 12 is the Bong Joon-ho Netflix original film, Okja. First of all, I just gotta come out clean with this. A Park Chan-wook or Bong Joon-ho film will always be on my top list. Always. It's just gonna happen. But Okja is also about something very near and dear to my heart, which it's essentially a really graphic, non-PETA-esque PSA about factory farming. Disguised as a talking animal, you know, friendship film. Which is exactly what it needed to be. I love it. It kind of has this feeling of like every kid's movie about a kid and their dog. Or even every apocalyptic movie about a dude and his dog. Because there are multiple.
Or more specifically, movies about kids and pigs. Like
that too, absolutely. Sort of Charlotte's Web kind of a thing. Where it is really engaging your childish emotion towards animals, but also engaging your adult logic towards how horrific factory farming is. And to balance those both, I think, was an incredibly strong decision creatively. The effects for Okja were insane. The VFX and the compositing were just mind-blowing, especially if you watch behind-the-scenes footage of how they accomplish it. I sat down, I saw how they did it. I still don't understand how they did it. It's just incredible to me. The little girl in the movie, and I always feel really bad that I can't remember her name, but that actress was a powerhouse. Another, like, little girl just killing it this year. She was just so wonderful to watch in this movie and so emotionally engaging. Obviously, I love that Paul Dano's in it, because I love everything he ever does, because he's...
Mija is her name in the film, and it's played by...
No, that's not her name. That's not... Seo Hanan.
Okay.
I know I totally butchered that. I'm really sorry. I guarantee that's not how you actually pronounce her name. But she is just incredible. She's another one of those people that I want to see her everywhere. I want to see her all the time. I want to see her on TV. I want to see her in movies. I want to see her in English-speaking roles. I want to see her in Korean-speaking roles. I want to see her everywhere. Not really, because she's still a kid. I don't want her to not be a kid. But she's just so engaging. I love how the story just keeps unfolding as things go on. I think that there's a lot of really interesting twists in how the movie goes. I like that the movie does go balls to the wall. There's animal rape in this movie. That's not really something that's addressed. And it's human-instigated animal rape, which is something we don't talk about, even when we talk about cruelty towards animals. And seeing that really graphically in the movie, I think was really deserved. I just loved... The PD was so good in the movie, too. I love the production design and the costumes. I loved all the action sequences. I just think every part of this movie was really bizarre and weird and works so well. This movie doesn't actually remind me of any other movie that really exists, except for maybe White Gods, but not really. I just loved all of it. And after Okja, my number 11 was Get Out.
All right, so we're going to take a break, and we'll come back to do our 10 through 1.